Welcome to the voicemail box of your local friendly Necromancer. Our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. Please leave a detailed message on which human, animal, or vicious hellbeast you would like to resurrect. Your call will be returned within 3 business days to book an appointment. Please ensure to have your down payment of your soul or firstborn child, or the soul or firstborn child of another being if you do not have one, at the time of your appointment. Thank you.
Hello, mortals, ghouls, and sassy spirits that everyone thinks are demonic because you were a prankster in life, and obviously now you're a prankster in death, telling people during the Estes method that
The devil has marked your soul.
Welcome to the Local Necromancer's Coffee Break, a podcast where we transcend this boring ass human life to absorb all of the paranormal juices. That's a thing now, isn't it? Yep, that's a thing. My name is Wrenna Stone. I am an author, paranormal investigator, and a totally not the local necromancer because apparently Pennsylvania doesn't like that. But in San Francisco, you only need a permit. I bet you guys are wondering what is set up next to me that keeps talking. I do have some equipment set up next to me. I also have my podcast notes below me because my brain doesn't work half the time, so I need notes to keep me going. So you guys are probably gonna see me reading a lot off of the page. That's just because otherwise I can't words. I can't words. It doesn't matter that I'm a writer. I can't words. Beside me here, I have obviously my coffee mug over. Wow, viewfinders are a thing. This is sacred land. We're doing things because this is Spirit Talker. It is a phone app. Usually I'm skeptical of phone apps, but this one, like, I keep my phone in airplane mode. I turn off my data, I turn off my Wi-Fi. It's all set up like it should be. And it gets some scary accurate answers. So I'm actually going to be posting another video on this channel because while I was trying to film and set up for this first podcast episode, things in my house kept happening because, long story short, yes, Wrenna, your local necromancer paranormal investigative author, lives in a haunted house. Never lived like in a super haunted house growing up. The only spirits that ever were there were, we believe, loved ones. So they were pretty chill. This place is a little bit different. This is Spirit Talker. Inspiration. It's giving me inspiration. I don't know. We'll just go with it. But anyway, this, I just kind of keep it up in the background. I'm just curious to see, like, as I'm talking about haunted locations, if maybe some words will come up that relate to what we're talking about. I also have my EMF reader set up down here. For clarification, because these are on shelves next to each other, EMF can pick up on phone energies. I keep it low enough that it is not going to pick up anything. So, see, it's all the way up to the top of the bookshelf, and it's not freaking out. It's only gonna freak out if it's, like, right beside it. Or if I smack it on something. So I do leave those two things running throughout the podcast, so enjoy whatever the hell comes across them. So this podcast is the product of me trying and failing to start a writing podcast, as any good author does, but I've never claimed to actually be good at authoring, so this thing was kind of born. I do enjoy talking about writing, but considering that my life is basically consumed by writing anyway, and working on my books, that can get a little overwhelming, and sometimes we all need a break. Even creatives, like, we need a break from our passion once in a while. So I decided, why not go to my other passion, which is paranormal investigating, haunted locations, local legends, folklore, all that good kind of stuff. So here we will be sharing campfire stories about what goes bump in the night. You be quiet. They're gonna interrupt me. I know they are. I don't even know who I'm talking to, so if you're a family member, I'm sorry. Possessed. Oh, go. Shut the fuck up. We're not letting anybody get possessed here. Nothing in this house is evil. At all. There is like an angrier, like, I don't even know if I'd say angry, just kind of grumpy spirit here. I believe it's one of the previous owners. It kind of matches up with some things that we've been told about that person in life. Whatever you're like in life, you're typically also like that in death. We don't let anything evil in this house, so I hear that, spirits. As I was saying, here we will be sharing campfire stories about what goes bump in the night and giving you all the history about various haunted locations. So what better way to start us off than with some Don't tell people. This is a podcast and telling all the people. What better way to start off a podcast than with first-hand spine-tingling encounters? This is why I set this stuff up. It's basically like having a co-host, except I don't have to put up with a living co-host. I'd rather yell at dead people, because that's apparently what I do. I can't yell at the living, because I have anxiety, and I will shrink into a ball and start crying. You are beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Annihilation. So, to begin our tale, I have been a ghost magnet since birth. There's no better way to describe it, honestly. Basically, if a location is haunted, the paranormal activity is going to follow me. My old boss, when I worked at the movie theater, once called me a ghost magnet because they hadn't had trouble with the theater, like, hauntings in a very long time. He said it had been years since I had any kind of paranormal activity until, lo and behold, I start working there. And then we're standing behind the concession counter, watching a door open and close by itself. So Ghost Magnet was born because every time I'd worked solo with him, lo and behold, again, more paranormal activity. It was super great. Super fun time. He never liked working solo with me, purely because of that. I don't know if my abilities as a ghost magnet is because I actually have a lot of psychics and mediums in my bloodline. I mean, it could also be because I've spent my whole life trying to just connect with what lies beyond. Or maybe it's because I have watched way too much Scooby-Doo as a kid.
We make the noises.
Yeah, I have a strong feeling you make the noises in here. My first experiences happened so young that I mostly only remember what my family told me. And all of today's stories take place about relatives who had passed in recent years. One in particular was my dad. My dad, Sam, passed away in an accident when I was 3 days old, and I never got the chance to know him in life. But he's made sure to make himself very known in death. When I was 4, my mom and aunt spent a day up in Lilydale, New York. Now, if you're not familiar with Lilydale, it is a hamlet over in western New York. It's a huge gathering of psychics, mediums, spiritualists. It's a really fantastic community. And despite it being on an episode of Supernatural as, a place of fake psychics and mediums where people were getting scammed, and I very distinctly remember like all the houses that were rigged with equipment to like freak out the people who'd come to pay to get a reading. There are like some legit people there. So since my mom was getting a reading, my aunt decided that she'd stroll her around 4-year-old me throughout the walking paths, and should be interesting for a kid to look at all the cool stuff. But was that the most interesting part for me? Nope. You know what was the most interesting part? The bathroom. I'd like you to just imagine this. You're an aunt strolling around your 4-year-old niece, and your niece, while you're trying to take a piss, is sitting there in her stroller, like laughing and waving and talking to the bathroom ceiling. You turn around to ask, "What are you talking to?" And your, 4-year-old niece turns around and says, "My dad, he's up there." I was that kid. Meanwhile, in my mom's reading, the medium was able to give her incredibly specific details about my dad, their relationship, and his death to confirm that she was speaking with him. The medium said my dad felt his death was very unfair because he'd always wanted children, and he finally had me. I was his only child, and he barely got to spend 3 days with me. She told my mom how much he encouraged her to tell me about him despite how much it hurt, because he didn't want me to forget him, even though I may never know him. She then went on to pass along messages from other loved ones that became eerily accurate over 20 years later. That just said daughter. So the other messages from this medium I will actually talk about another time, because it's kind of a long and interesting story, and I kind of want to stay on track with just these couple of tales that I have for you today. You could write this off as a medium managing to guess the situation correctly without actually connecting to a past loved one. But considering she randomly tacked on a warning at the end for my mom to be cautious because she would become diabetic in the future, only for my mom to actually become diabetic about 10 to 15 years later, I'm gonna put my money on that medium being very correct. Needless to say, when my mom and aunt met up afterwards and compared notes on how my mom was getting contact from my dad, meanwhile my aunt was watching me talk to my dad on the bathroom ceiling, it was an interesting afternoon, and this definitely became something for the family history books.
My name is Catherine.
Well, hello, Catherine. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for joining the podcast. You are a guest on my podcast. We are telling stories to people about paranormal encounters like this one. I hope you enjoy. But seriously, nice to meet you, Catherine.
She screams.
She screams. It's okay. Sometimes I like to scream, especially after a long shift at work. But anyway, yeah, that's the first story about how I was the small child going, "I see dead people." Now again, I have no memory of this. I don't know if I actually saw my dad floating on the ceiling like he drank tea with Mary Poppins. Who the hell knows? But it spooked the hell out of my aunt. Even to this day, like, she still talks about it. Second story happened a few months later. My grandpa passed away from lung cancer right before Thanksgiving that year, and I couldn't understand why he wasn't there for Thanksgiving and why he wouldn't be back for Christmas. And if there's one thing about child me, I would pester the living hell out of someone until I got an answer that was acceptable to me. I am totally not at all like that as an adult. My mom finally told me that Papa went to live with Jesus, and that's why he wouldn't be there with us anymore. I couldn't understand why I couldn't talk to him or why Jesus wouldn't let him come visit home. So eventually, my mom told me that the one way I could talk to my grandpa would be to ask for him when I dialed 1-800-HEAVEN. You should never tell a child to dial 1-800-HEAVEN to talk to their past loved ones, because I immediately grabbed our landline phone, dialed the number 1, and then proceeded to complain that our phone was broken because there was no 800. So my mom immediately taught me how to dial the 800 and then dial the word heaven. The call didn't go through. It's not an actual phone number. But that did not stop me from trying, especially when my mother was not looking. But apparently I wasn't very sneaky about it, because I had her help me with like dates, ages, stuff like that for this, because again, it was so long ago that I don't actually remember a lot of these events. So when I started reading this to her, she's like, oh yeah, I knew you were still dialing it on the phone. You weren't that sneaky. Look, child me thought I was a fucking ninja. Adult me knows I'm not, but I'd still like to pretend to be. So if you ever see me sneaking around, just humor me, okay? But apparently, one of my calls made it through. My mom came into the living room one day and found me like pacing circles in between all of the furniture, and I had this little toy phone held up to my ear. She hears me go, "This is Samantha. I want to talk to my papa." Because even though my pen name is Wrenna Stone, my real name is actually Sam. I was named after my dad. After I asked for my papa, there was a short pause, and I finally said, "Okay, I'll wait. Just go get him." A few seconds later, I was very adamantly talking to my papa. This went on for quite a few minutes. My mom's told me that I demanded to know why Jesus wouldn't let him come home, but somehow I ended up having understanding about this, even though I was just talking on a toy phone and clearly there was nobody on the other end. Eventually, I ended my call with a very direct, "Okay, Papa. I love you too." So when I got older, she asked me about the experience talking to my papa on the phone, because she was writing a yearly Christmas letter for all of her friends and she wanted to tell the story for the first time. And so I think after hearing about like me talking to my dad on the bathroom ceiling at Lilydale, she just never asked me about it when it actually happened, because I honestly just don't think she even wanted to know my answer at that point. I mean, how the hell is a 4-year-old talking to her papa on a plastic phone after she's been insisting for weeks and like notoriously calling numbers and knowing she's not getting through? Now all of a sudden I'm talking to him. Like, it wasn't just like me playing pretend. Like, this was something I was adamant about as a 4-year-old. Years later, she was surprised to know that I remembered that phone call. And I still do to this day. I don't recall everything my papa said, but I very clearly remember pacing circles in the living room with that little phone up to my ear. And I know I was talking to him. When my mom asked me about it, I kind of looked at her weird, because I remembered talking to my papa on the phone. And I think until that moment, either I had just never thought about the phone call, or I don't know, but like it was like, until that moment, I didn't even realize he was dead when that call happened. Phone. I'm letting you guys make of that what you will. But the experience, like, it actually gives me chills to this day, because I can even recall exactly how our living room was arranged at the time, where every piece of furniture was. And the weird thing about that for me is, like, it wasn't like we had the same layout in the living room for the 20-some years that we lived there. It was that specific year, like, we had redecorated everything after my grandpa died. And it actually really didn't stay that way for a super long time. I think it was just one of those grief things of you kind of move things around, rearrange, just try to make it look different. And I remember the exact layout that we had for maybe only 2 months. As I got older, these experiences came across as less weird to my family and more like an overactive imagination. I mean, I was a Scooby-Doo obsessed child. Please don't be hiding in my attic. There's a hatch right up here that goes to it. That's not cool, man. It's dusty up there. On old insulation, it's not comfortable. What the fuck just touched my arm? We're gonna ignore that. I don't know if... was that my hair? Because I was going like this. Maybe it was my hair. Anyway. You know, I was a Scooby-Doo obsessed kid, so when you're playing pretend, looking for ghosts, stuff like that, overactive imagination, obviously. So going back a little bit, after my dad died, we kind of rushed back to Pennsylvania because my mom had been living with him all the way across the country and we didn't have family out there. We moved back here to be with my mom's family, and we actually like packed up everything and moved into my grandparents' house. And we had just a lot of like random things and boxes just kind of everywhere for a while. It got a little more cleaned up as time went on, but honestly, it was old stuff from California that we didn't need. So we just kind of would leave it because, okay, this is the pile of things we don't need, right? So I was convinced as a child that there was something in my bedroom. It wasn't a monster under my bed or in the closet, and it wasn't even the dolls that I would tie up inside mounds of blankets at night because I was afraid they'd murder me while I slept. Long story. It wasn't even anything I could see. But in the corner of my room, there was a wooden dresser filled with a lot of old stuff we never looked at, and the top was cluttered with like papers and knickknacks and stuff. Honestly, like it was part of the scenery at that point. I am paying attention to it. I think I always just kind of figured that it was like maybe stuff from my parents' old apartment or something. I don't know. I'd never honestly thought about it, but I would swear that there was a ghost in the corner watching me. And I would insist that it was a ghost as a little kid. Like, it wasn't anything else. Like, I think something's there. Like, there's a ghost there. And I could feel eyes on me when I would wake up during the night, or like when I was trying to fall asleep, like all of a sudden you just have that feeling like there's eyes on you. But it's not negative. Like, it's not anything scary. It just felt like something was watching over me. And being adamant as I was as a kid, I was determined someone was going to tell me what it was. But when your entire family is insisting, that nothing's in the corner, nothing's watching you, there's no monster under your bed, you're ugly. Are we just talking back to Spirit Talker over here? I wasn't accepting the fact that there was nothing there because I knew better than that. I knew there was something in that corner. One day, a friend of my grandma's came over and he was running some phone lines and he had to run one into my room, which was going to go behind that dresser. So we cleaned up the dresser and we moved it out from the corner a little bit. I kept telling him how I thought there was a ghost in the corner. So he grabbed us some hats and some flashlights and he decided he was going to take me ghost hunting. I don't even know what we did. Honestly, if we just shine flashlights around, I don't know. All I remember are hats and flashlights, which is really funny because, and this is a little bunny trail, obviously I just mentioned my real name is Sam. Well, this gentleman, a friend of my grandma's, his name, of all names in the world, was Colby. So, in another life, we could have cornered the YouTube market on paranormal and been the first Sam and Colby. I mean, it's really funny to me now because I do watch Sam and Colby's YouTube videos. I started out watching like other paranormal YouTubers, and then you know how it goes. Like YouTube just recommends you more videos and like it recommends you other investigators, and then those other investigators go on investigations with other investigators. And somehow I found my way to Sam and Colby's channel. They're one of the many paranormal YouTubers that I watch. So I've always found that really funny that their names are Sam and Colby because I'm Sam. I ghost hunted with a dude named Colby when I was like, 4 or 5 years old, however old I was. Like, this all happened. All of these stories I'm telling you today, like, they all happened at kind of similar times. It's really weird. So, like, as a young kid, I was definitely a lot more tuned in, I think, to things in the paranormal world. I think we all are as young kids. And then as we get older and more quote-unquote rational, we kind of lose a little bit of that. I definitely was tuned in. And I was paying attention and I wasn't taking no for an answer. This ghost hunt ended just like asking my family. It was, shine a flashlight in the corner and, hey, there's no ghosts there. You're perfectly safe. You're perfectly fine. You're not haunted. Yeah, bullshit. I knew better. But it honestly left me wondering if I was the only one that knew about this thing. Was I the only one that could feel it? Was I the only one that could see it? Did it only just come out at night? And because we were doing this in the middle of the afternoon, is that why he couldn't see this thing or feel something watching him? I didn't understand. And it didn't stop the feeling of being watched. Like, this continued throughout my entire life. Like, up until we moved just a couple years ago, like, I would still occasionally wake up during the night and feel like something was watching me. But then, when we moved about 3 years ago, I discovered an eerie truth. Because my mom asked me the one day when we were packing up our car to move everything to the new house, hey, on that wooden dresser, can you grab the box that's on there? I go to pick it up and it's like deceivingly heavy. And I made a joke about like it being full of bricks or something. And my mom's like, yeah, just please don't drop it because I don't want to be scrubbing your dad out of the floor. Because, that's totally not something that's going to make someone drop the thing that they're holding. This random wooden box that had been covered by papers and knickknacks in the corner of my room my entire life was my dad's urn. And no, I didn't know that. I never asked where my dad's ashes were. I knew he'd been cremated, but, as a kid, I really didn't talk about him a lot, even to family, just because it hurt. Nobody really understood the feeling of losing your dad at 3 days old and never knowing him, yet you grieve him like he was a part of your life for 20 years. I suddenly realized that, like, this is the corner that something has been watching me from, and it's the only corner of the house that my dad's ashes are in. So even though I wasn't ready to see his urn, I wasn't ready to see him, it didn't stop him from seeing me and watching over me. And now I typically wear cremation jewelry every day. I don't actually have his ashes in it yet. I literally like just got it not very long ago. But I have a little cross necklace that I'm going to be putting his ashes in. I typically wear it all the time, but I forgot to put it on this morning. So great job, Wrenna. Great job. And stories like these are a fraction of why I'm invested in the paranormal, but the heart of it's true. Even as a little kid, I wanted nothing more than to connect with the loved ones I'd lost. And little me clearly had some tricks for how to do it. If 26-year-old me had the same confidence as 4-year-old me demanding that Jesus let me talk to my papa, man, I'd have dominated the world by now. It'd be kind of fun actually, because I remember as a kid I always like wrote this list of like, if I become the ruler of the world, I'm gonna make all American Girl dolls free, because I wanted one, and then I got one and I was terrified of it because I thought it was gonna murder me in the night. Long story. Again, I've always known there's life after death, in whatever capacity that may be. Whether I'm using a flashlight with my grandma's friends, random ghost hunting radar apps as a teenager, or I'm using legitimate investigation techniques and equipment as an adult, my heart for the paranormal has never changed. My dad never wanted to be forgotten, even by someone who didn't know him. And I will investigate so that other spirits don't feel forgotten either. They deserve to have their stories told, because even though they may not be my dad, they could have been someone's dad or child, sibling, aunt. They were someone to somebody. And even if they were no one to everybody, why can't we tell their story? Every story needs to be told. And I'm a writer, so what better thing for me to do than tell a story? My realm of paranormal experiences is far from being told. I have a plethora of stories from all 26, almost 27 years that I've been here. So I just couldn't fit them all, obviously, into one episode. So breaking them up by thing, I don't know if it'll go in order chronologically, or if I'll just spur the moment be like, today I'm going to jump 15 years in the future and I'm going to talk about this other random thing that happened. But for today, I will leave you with the stories of a girl who just wanted to talk to her dad and her papa. But I can't end on that sappy of a note, because that is just not my style. That is all for today, and I want to thank you all so much for joining this first episode of the Local Necromancers Coffee Break. I will be back with a lot more videos. I do have a lot of cool like paranormal locations lined up to talk about. So the next episode is actually going to talk about a location called the Old Crowley Manor. It is in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is pretty local for me. So I love talking about local haunted locations, and I will go to more well-known ones in the future, but I really thought it would be fun to start with something local, and definitely I'm going to be spreading like more things from this area in the podcast. So stay tuned. Don't sell your soul. Drink your coffee. Maybe sprinkle some water in there. Have a good night, guys.
Audrey.
Good night from Audrey. Especially good night to Audrey. Love you guys.